Remember these? I miss these so bad. I actually have quite a few of these still. Tack för sist, välkommen tillbaka. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, sharing, commenting. I dig it all. This is actually one of my favorite 80s bands. I think they might be the most underrated band in the 80s, Night Ranger. You hear those hummingbirds? Pretty freaking cool. They've been buzzing my head. I don't know if they just don't want me out here. But I miss albums so much, even though I have quite a few albums. And I have quite a few albums from 40 years ago plus. I have an album, I believe it's the first album I ever got. My boss gave it to me at the gas station I was working at in the 70s. And it was ELO. I love ELO. This video is kind of just about nostalgia and growing up in the 70s and the early 80s for me. I graduated high school in 1981, just to give you a reference point. It is another scorcher out here, by the way. But this time, I decided to not wear my sweaty shirt. I was doing so much yard work yesterday, and I was like, if I'm gonna get a video done, I just gotta do it. So, even album covers, I miss them. You know, they always had liner notes in here. The album is not in here right now because I've been downstairs and I've been playing the album on my record player. Yes, I have a record player. I actually am in the process of redoing the basement and turning it into a man cave / sports bar. Actually, it's not so much sports. I'm not as much into sports anymore. It's more a nostalgia bar. Like I have some Star Wars posters. I have an Air Supply poster, which is a little embarrassing, but there's a story behind it because my buddy gave it to me at his wedding 7-8 years ago. He said, I don't ever want to hear the name of Air Supply again. And it's signed by Graham Russell and Russell Hitchcock, the two lead guys for Air Supply. So I had to hang it up. I had to. So, and I actually like Air Supply, but you know, well, to each his own. You know, that's one thing I never do. I don't hear somebody playing certain music and say, how can you listen to that crap? We all have different tastes. I know my music tastes are not the same as everybody else. I like classic rock. I like country, old and new. I like 80s hair bands. I like 80s ballads. I like 70s mellow rock, you know, James Taylor, Lobo, Rupert Holmes, America. I mean, there's so much stuff I dig. I love listening to it and being transported back. They're like time machines. They really are. Just for those of you, if you're around my age, I'm 62, graduated in 81, like I said. But you don't have to be that age. I get comments from young people, like even teenagers saying, hey, I dig this music on my TikTok account, because that's where I do a lot of music, a lot of 70s and early 80s stuff I do on there. I do have a Linktree link on my profile now, so it's easy to get to both. I'm still working on those. It's a work in progress, so be patient with me. I am not great at this technology stuff, but I'm figuring it out, man. I'm figuring it out. But 70s for me, it's a feeling as much as it's a memory. Do you remember, like I said, if you're in my, say, I don't know, 45 and older, but hey, you might do this, you might be 25 and you did this. That's freaking cool. I dig it. Just getting on your bike with your buddy or buddies and just riding around town. I grew up in a small town, so we had very few safety concerns. I get it, if you live in a big city, it's not the same. I'm not comparing or saying one's better than the other. I just know my experience. I grew up in a small town where we'd get on our bikes, we drank out of the hose. I remember when I got my first Walkman, I believe I was 16, because I was driving and we would drive up to the ski hill in British Columbia, which was, I don't know, maybe 2.5 hours away, and you'd put that Walkman on. I put on some Billy Squier, Everybody Wants You, just rock out, and I could ski better. I could ski better when I had good music playing. And just the whole feel of it, the cars, muscle cars were huge when I was in high school. And back then, late 60s, early 70s were considered old cars to us. It'd be like saying, a 2015 2015 is an old car. Good Lord, the years fly by. Holy cow. But, I had friends that had 69 Novas and El Caminos and Chevelles and Malibus, and to let's say from about 67 to 73. Those were the years. A lot of my friends had cars from there. I never had a cool car like that. I did have a Mustang, but it was the newer model when they made them small and just gutless and kind of crappy. But I drove a bunch of my friends. I had a friend who had a 69 Camaro SS. That was a badass car. Oh man. And here's another thing. And I don't mean this to come across in a negative way. It just was a fact. And if you grew up with it, you know what I'm talking about. If you had a hot car, you had a hot girlfriend, period. Didn't matter what you looked like. I knew some dudes that, well, I don't want to get negative. Picture it for yourself. If you had a hot car, you had a hot girlfriend, period. End of story. There were guys I was like, how'd you get her? But I'm sure people looked at some of the girlfriends I had and said, how'd you get her? So, it was just a fun, carefree time. And maybe it's just the time we grew up in, no matter what it was. My dad grew up in the 40s and 50s. And he talks about, we were just back in Norway and we went and saw his childhood home. And it was right by the ocean. There's a giant silo building there now, but it's right by the ocean, and his buddies and him would walk down to the ocean, jump off these little cliffs and swim. He's talked about it, and he talks about it with delight, just like I am right now about the 70s and 80s. When we got old enough, going to concerts and just rocking out to our favorite bands. I grew up in Canada, so I loved Prism and Trooper, and I was never a huge Rush fan, but I liked Rush. Loverboy I was a big fan of. It's funny, we always thought Heart was Canadian because those sisters are from Vancouver, but it's Vancouver, Washington. So they were not Canadian, as I found out later. But like I was talking about earlier, getting out on your bikes, riding around, just having a great time, completely carefree. If we had 25 cents in our pocket, we'd go get a big gulp. I've told this before, but going to the States for vacation when I was, let's say between 10 and 14 years old, we'd go to this little lake in the Whitefish, Montana area called Lake Blaine. It's actually close to Kalispell, if you know that area. This little lake tucked into the mountains, and it had a resort there that's gone now. It's all subdivided and it sucks. I hate it. But we had so much fun, and for a quarter, my mom would give me and my next two youngest brothers each a quarter. And we could go buy a candy bar and a soda for that. But like I said, riding around our bikes, when 7-Eleven came to town, and I don't remember the year, but I want to say I was probably 13, so maybe 76, 77, somewhere in there. And you could get a big gulp, which was the biggest soda we had ever seen in our lives, for, I think it was like 29 cents, maybe 39 cents, somewhere in there. And we were just happy as could be. It took so little. We didn't have internet, we had no Wi-Fi, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have video games. The only video games we had, and by the way, I should do a separate video on arcades, because I was the king of the game Defender, if you know that one from back in the day. There was me and this other guy would go back and forth with the high score on Defender, because I had a buddy whose dad was a pool player, like a professional pool player. And he opened an arcade and pool hall in town. If you're from that area, you know what? It's long gone, so I'm going to say the name. I'm not affecting anybody's privacy here. It's called Walt's Place. And I know some of you watching know it because I know some of you are from Tabor. And we would go in there and spend, I don't even think they took quarters to video games then. It might have been a dime. I don't remember. But when I went to college in 1981, when I was 17, I went to college in the States. And I came home between semesters, and he had set the high score. So I would spend however many dollars I had to spend to get that high score. it's really hard. You know, yesterday I was talking about a religious thing, you know, the Holy Ghost, the feeling. How do you describe it? How do you define it? It's kind of similar with this. I mean, and I'm not saying, you know what? I changed my mind. Childhood memories and the nostalgia of looking back at all those fantastic times is a spiritual experience for me. It is. And I'm not comparing it to, you know, the religious experience of feeling God in your life, or you know, I'm not trying to belittle that. Please don't take me wrong. That's not what I'm saying here. But it is a spiritual experience for me, because just talking about it now, it just makes me happy. Playing our records. We used to, here's kind of I never considered myself a nerdy guy, and I got nothing against, you know, if nerds run the world. Let's be honest. If you were a computer geek in high school and now you're working for, you know, whatever, Apple, Microsoft, Google, you rule the world now. So you get the last laugh. But I did have a bit of a nerdy side in that I liked board games. And we had some friends. In fact, I'm pretty sure the friend that hosted this all the time is probably watching this video. And we would play Risk. And we would go load up on like a big gulp, a couple of candy bars, some potato chips, and on a Friday night, it might have even been after we were driving, actually. It probably started around 14 and went till 16 or 17. And then we even had some reunions, you know, after college, and hey, let's all go over to his place and play some Risk. And I mean, we do it for hours. There'd be 4, 5, 6 of us. And he had a kick-ass stereo system. Bang & Olufsen, I remember. And he was the best dude with money I have ever seen in my life. As a 15-year-old, he had more money than most adults I knew. I spent everything I made. He spent some, but he saved like crazy. And he's an accountant now, so it kind of makes sense. But he had this kick-ass stereo system with hundreds of albums, because he would DJ dances for both, I think both for the church dances and maybe some others too. So we could play any record we wanted, anything we could think of, and we would spend hours playing. If you've ever played Risk, you know it can last a long time. And man, I just need to do a whole series on this topic, because there are so many things floating down the irrigation ditches in the summer. I know some of you that didn't grow up with that are like, that's ridiculously crazy dangerous. It really wasn't. Now, there was one really bad incident in the whole time I grew up, and it sucked, and it probably shouldn't have happened. But you got to remember back then, you know, people say safety first. I could not disagree more. Safety is important, but safety is like third or fourth. If safety was first, our national speed limit would be 5 miles an hour. You couldn't go more than 2 miles an hour around town, because safety first. You can't take any chances. So I've never been a big fan of that anyway. Now, there is a happy medium between how it was probably in the 70s and now. Now some places have gone over the top, just to extremes, and it's like a mom and dad complex from the people setting the rules. And we didn't have seatbelts when I was a kid, and if you did, you didn't use them. Everybody rode around the back of pickup trucks. Everybody that had a pickup had a gun rack in the back with a gun in it, and nobody ever got hurt. Ever. I don't know if it was a different mindset back then, if it was the fact that I grew up in a small town. We had respect for each other. Not that we don't today, and we also were, you know, bad word coming here. We were also little shits at times. I mean, we did stuff we shouldn't have, and we got in trouble, but it was never anything super serious, and the fun ruled. If we had something fun I can't ever remember one time saying to my parents, I'm bored. What can I do? And because I knew what I was going to do, especially when summer vacation hit. I remember that song by Alice Cooper, School's Out for Summer. Oh, yeah. Man, when that song would start playing, it was like, okay, freedom heaven is coming right now. We are about to have 3 months of just unfettered access to whatever we want. We'll be able to do whatever we want, go wherever we want within reason. And it was just such a good time. If there's some interest in this video, I'm going to do a lot more of these, because I want to talk about, once we started driving and the bonfire parties out in the country, and what stereo did you have in your car? I remember I got this was when I was a little older, 18, 19, I got a Clarion stereo in my 77 Sunbird. It was orange. And if you know the term mags, we call them mags, the big wheels with the big tires with the mag wheel in it. Fat tires on the back, skinnier tires on the front, kind of lifted. And I would crank that stereo. And car stereos were such a huge deal, especially for the dudes. There were some badass girls in our high school too that drove their pickup trucks and wore their boots, and it was, I'm almost done. Do you remember hiking boots? Was that a thing in your high school in the 70s? So here was the thing. They were these big, I got to use the word again because it fits here, big shit kicking boots. And I remember they had red laces and they were like brown. And then we would buy jeans that had the flares at the bottom, and they had to cover your boot. The big popular brand there, and I believe it was probably a Canadian brand, was called Big Blue, I think, jeans. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong on that. But the flares had to cover your boots, because you had these big boots that you could kind of see the bottom of, and then your flare jeans. Oh man, it's just so fun reminiscing. I am going to, probably not real soon because I'm headed back on the road for work, but I am going to do YouTube Live. I haven't figured out how that works yet, so I got to figure all that out, and I want to do it right. And I would like to start maybe doing some Zoom call, whatever you call it, where you have a split screen where I talk to somebody else, interview somebody. I'm thinking about reaching out to some bigger creators. I mean, bigger than me, which doesn't take much. I'm not going to get somebody who has 5 million followers, but maybe I can get somebody with 50,000 followers or 100,000 followers. I mentioned Rob the Maritimer the other day. I dig his videos. He talks about how to grow your YouTube. He's up in Canada, Newfoundland, I think. And we flew right over Newfoundland and Greenland coming home. But maybe I'll reach out to him, or if any of you know him, reach out and say, I'd love to pick your brain a little bit, for the people that watch me, to kind of give them tips. So I'd like to start doing some more of that kind of stuff too. But I got to get back to the grind. I've got to fix some more sprinklers. I just got to get it all done today. It's not as hot today as it was yesterday. I think it's only in the mid 90s today only. But man, Norway, it was so nice being in like 58, 62, 65 degree weather. It was so pleasant, so much fun. So thanks for watching again. Tell me your favorite album from the 70s and 80s. Like I said, I don't know that Night Ranger is my favorite group. They are up there, and they are the most underrated group, in my opinion. I absolutely love Night Ranger. Don't tell me you love me. So check out my TikTok page as well. Just click the link tree. And we'll talk to y'all soon. I hope y'all have a beautiful, beautiful, blessed day. I really do. Even those of you don't like me, that's cool. To each his own. But I gotta say, overwhelmingly positive comments. Even when you disagree with me, some of you who disagree with me are very respectful. I got no problem with that. Everybody doesn't have to see the world the way I see it. As long as you're nice, don't hurt people, treat people right, hey, we can have a beautiful world. Tack för denna gång. Men snackas igen snart. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. Dig y'all. Peace. Love.